Now welcome to another lightning response video where I have been getting a ton of great questions lately, which is awesome. I thank you all for that. And I do always feel a bit bad that I can't or don't answer more of them. Maybe people would like if these videos were longer, maybe much longer. I don't know. If you do, let me know in the comments below. Either way, this time I have a question that kind of goes along with, or that I'm going to merge with, something that George R.R. Martin recently said. And he, of course, is the author of the Song of Ice and Fire books, or more commonly known as Game of Thrones. But anyway, to start this off, let's get to the question that comes to us from Lo Baka Shaka, who asked, "Hey Thor, what do you think of the new quote by Leslye Headland? There were two reasons I wanted to set it in that particular time period and that far away from the prequels. One, I didn't want to mess with any canon. The other thing that I loved about this period was the lack of legacy characters. I was too nervous to take them on, but also I feel like we've seen a lot of that. The High Republic felt like a sandbox that I could easily jump into. Is this a good approach compared to other showrunners Disney have had in the past?" And I'm not so sure this is the right approach to have. And I don't say this to attack her in particular or anything, but if you're going to do Star Wars, or pretty much any major, well-established franchise really, I don't think you should be afraid of the canon or nervous to take on the legacy characters. I think if you know it well enough and you are excited enough and passionate enough, you should almost be eager to take that all on. You should be eager to contribute to, and perhaps even enhance in some capacity, what is already there in the canon, instead of having to move to a completely blank time or place in the galaxy because you're nervous or afraid of getting it all wrong. Which isn't to say every new Star Wars story, be it a show or a movie, that it has to be or should be heavily intertwined with the existing canon or feature legacy characters. I am all for new and different things in Star Wars. Or that someone who doesn't know the canon backwards and forwards, inside and out, that they couldn't ever create something that is good and fits into it with a little bit of effort and help from those who maybe do know it a bit better. Only that I don't think you should ever come into a project in a major franchise like Star Wars being truly afraid. Rather, no matter your knowledge level, you need to come into it humble and respectful of the source material and the fans who love the source material. You need to realize that you are playing in the sandbox of another, one that has become a long-lasting franchise because the original work was that damn good, that it has stood the test of time and was able to spawn more stories or to be retold. You can be eager, absolutely, and maybe even a bit bold. You should have confidence in yourself and not be so, shall we say, timid with what you're willing to do or willing to try, that it offers nothing new or original at all and just feels bland and not even worth watching. In order to create something that contributes or enhances, you do have to take some chances. But not so many chances, or be so eager, or perhaps I should say ambitious or foolish, that you think you're going to come in and make changes to something long since established, or do something with a beloved character, a legacy character, that will recontextualize the original work and improve upon it somehow, and then be loved by all the fans. I mean, it's not impossible to do that, but I think there is a very, very tiny margin for error when you're playing around with something that is firmly established by the original creator. I think most fans are going to reject it unless it makes absolute sense and could have potentially been what was implied in the first place, or is maybe correcting a sort of mistake or something that could be perceived to be a mistake in the original work, like clearing some sort of contradiction up perhaps. But then in those cases, we're only talking about something relatively small scale and certainly not a sort of reimagining of the whole work. When someone tries to do that, as George R.R. Martin recently said in a blog post, you're going to make something worse 999 times out of 1,000. Especially when you try to take something that is perhaps viewed as a classic or that has a massive diehard fan base, and you try to make it your own and justify that by claiming, as Martin said about those who do this, the book is the book, the film is the film. That's what they will tell you, as if they were saying something profound. Then they make the story their own. They never make it better, though. Again, 999 times out of 1,000, they make it worse. And though, yes, Martin was talking about adaptations of books into movies or shows in his blog, how it doesn't even matter who the author is, someone will come around and think they can do better than some of the greatest writers of all time with their own work. But anyway, I think it still also applies to someone making new content in an established universe. You can't just come in and think you can or that you should make it your own. because, quite simply, it is not yours. Even if it is no longer owned by the person who originally created it, like with George Lucas and Star Wars, that doesn't mean you shouldn't respect where it came from or the person who created it, or that you shouldn't respect what the fans expect from it. I mean, it existing and the fans willing to watch it because of the name, that is giving you the opportunity in the first place. Always keep that in mind. Basically, you need to realize you are playing in the shadows of giants. So stop trying to stand on their shoulders and claim you're taller than them. And if you want to truly stand among the giants, shoulder to shoulder with them, you really need to create your own original stories, I think. Which, I get, isn't exactly easy in this day and age when, yeah, pretty much everything Hollywood seems to do is set in a franchise or is based off a book or is a remake of this or that. I get those are the only jobs or the bulk of the jobs available, if you will. And because you want to be noticed, you want the chance to tell your own stories, you do try to do something creative or transformative to a classic. You're trying to get attention, but I don't think that is the best way to do it, to gain fans of you or your work in particular. I don't think bastardizing the work of others and saying you made it better when you likely didn't is going to get you the kind of attention you're looking for. However, here, getting back to Leslye Headland now, this isn't what she's doing or isn't what she's claiming she's doing anyway. She seems to think that what she's doing is not going to affect the larger canon or any legacy characters because it is set 100 years before all of that. And at most, we'll probably see Yoda hobble through a shot in the Jedi Temple at some point. We're likely not going to see any legacy characters used in a meaningful way. Not that there's a ton of them to be used at this point in time anyway. Problem with all this, though, is that the show she's doing, which of course is The Acolyte, potentially has enormous canon implications. It is, in a sense, a prequel to not just the prequel trilogy, but the whole Skywalker saga, one that seemingly will set up what the Sith have been doing in the shadows for all this time. Thus, I would argue her show is more canon sensitive, if you will, than she is apparently realizing or maybe acknowledging, which is kind of concerning to me in either case. I mean, one of the biggest fears some have about the show, including myself, is that it will mess with the canon, that it'll have the Jedi encounter the Sith 100 years before the prequels, which seems to completely contradict what we know from The Phantom Menace, thanks to Ki-Adi-Mundi saying, "We have not seen the Sith in a millennium." And actually, she has all but confirmed the Jedi and Sith will encounter each other in the show. She said elsewhere, or maybe it was the same interview, I cannot recall, but she said something along the lines of that she thought it made sense that the Jedi would encounter the Sith shortly before the prequels because Yoda knows about the rule of two in the prequels and had to learn about it from somewhere. She also said that, and this isn't a direct quote, but she said she didn't know how else Qui-Gon would have immediately recognized Darth Maul was a Sith, why he was so convinced he was one right away, unless one of their kind had been encountered fairly recently. However, my line of thinking is kind of the opposite when it comes to Qui-Gon immediately coming to the conclusion that Maul had to be a Sith. For me, I think he thought it had to be a Sith because they have not seen, or there is no record of another Jedi fighting someone this skilled in the Jedi arts, as he said. No Jedi has fought anything like this in 1,000 years since the last time they saw the Sith. This was him encountering someone who was basically just as skilled in the use of the Force, but using the dark side of it, as he was. And thus he's either a Sith or a new sort of iteration of a fully trained dark side user that goes by a different name now, but is still a Sith for all intents and purposes. The same way, as I have pointed out before, that Ahsoka says she isn't a Jedi, but certainly is like one in almost every way, and if you encountered her, you'd certainly think she was one, even if she didn't call herself as such. And so, to start to wrap this up, what I really see as the problem here is that so many people in the industry these days see these franchises as a means by which to make their mark instead of wanting to truly contribute something to them because that's what they actually want to do, because they're fans of it and they love it because telling Star Wars stories is actually what they want to do. And, like I was saying, that's partly Hollywood's fault, or mainly Hollywood's fault, for not wanting to take the chance on new and original stories. So anyone who wants to get into the business is sort of forced into the franchises to prove themselves, and to stand out from the crowd, they do something transformative or that they think will be profound in order to get noticed. Though that said, I also don't think you should go into it afraid. I think you have to be a little bold. You have to take some risks here and there in order to tell a story worth being told in the franchise. And I think as long as you truly want to do that, as long as you want to tell a story in the franchise and not just use the franchise to tell your story for your reasons, you're at the very least starting out with the right mindset. But anyway, I think that is going to be all I have for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about any and all of this. Tell me what you think about what Leslye Headland had to say or what George R.R. Martin had to say. Or you can always ask a question for a future lightning response video. All you got to do is start your comment off with "Hey Thor" and then ask away. Whatever you choose to do though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.